Hello everybody, my name is Brian Stack and I'm the principal here at Sanborn Regional High School, and I wanted to take a few minutes to summarize some of the things that I presented last night to the school board and the budget committee. I was asked to talk about the impact of current graduation requirements to class size and the overall budget. So I'm going to give you kind of an overview of that now in case you missed my presentation last night. So one of the first questions that the board and the budget committee asked me to talk about, and this came up in a variety of different ways, they want to know how our high school staffing levels compare to other New Hampshire high schools, especially schools that are really close in size to us, right? It's a big question. It comes up a lot. So I thought one way to answer it would be to actually look at all the schools that are close to our size. So I pulled a list. And there are 21 schools on this list, and you can see we're about in the middle. All right, I picked schools that were within 25% of our size. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to look at the ratio of the number of teachers that we have versus the enrollment of that school. If I were to divide those two columns and then rank everybody from top to bottom, this is what it would look like. So what does that tell us? That tells us that if I'm a school that's ranked number 1, 2, 3, 4, it means that I have more teachers for every student than a school down towards the bottom of the list, right? They have fewer teachers for every student. Being somewhere in the middle kind of tells us that, you know, we're not too high, not too low. We're just about where we'd want to be. Now, I want you to remember that all of this information is based on data from the 2017-2018 school year. It's a year out of date, all right? So things that have happened between now and then, our enrollment has actually gone up by almost 40 students, but we've made some teaching reductions. From last year to this year, we cut 3 teaching positions, and then we added one. We cut a family consumer science, a math, a half of a French, and a half of in music, and then we picked up a full special ed position. So what I did is I redid our chart, and now you see the Sanborn data from 17-18, but you also see a little further down the list what our current reality looks like right now. So this tells us that compared to schools our size, we're pretty low staffed. There are only 4 schools that actually have a higher student to staff ratio than we do. So it's something that we want to think about as we try to answer the question for the board and the budget committee member of whether or not we have any room to look at any staff reductions in our school. All right, something I brought up to the board is that our teachers are really taxed trying to meet student needs. They do a lot. They teach a lot. They have FLT. They do a lot after school. If we start making staff cuts, we're going to be asking more and more of our teachers. So you have to ask yourself, are they going to stay if we do that? All right, so here's a chart. I'm looking at those exact same schools, but I put the average teacher salary there. And again, this number comes right from the Department of Education. Look all the way at the top of the list. These schools similar in size to us are paying their teachers somewhere between $70,000 and almost $75,000 a year. We are down around $51,000, $52,000 a year, and of course there are some schools lower than us. I mention this because, of course, if we start to cut too many staff members, our teachers are going to start to look elsewhere. That's just the reality, right? And there are a lot of places that they could be looking that pay more. They choose to work here because they like it here. They believe in what we're doing, but there's only so much that we can ask them to do. What does turnover look like in the last several years? Well, I'll tell you what. We've hired a lot of teachers. This is my 13th year here. I pulled data from the last 7 years to show you that just last year we had to hire 11 new teachers. And the 2 years before that, it was 14 teachers apiece. You can see I listed out what the actual positions were. But I'll tell you guys, hiring new teachers, it's a lot of work. It takes, think about it, when you start a new job, how long does it take you to get good at your job? I'm guessing you're going to say 2 to 3 years. At least definitely in a professional career like being a teacher, that's pretty average. So we spend a lot of time with helping people rise up to be better teachers. We want to do what we can to make sure that we keep them here. So the next question that came up, this was directly from the school board. They are looking at potentially making a reduction in our graduation requirements. Or they're asking the question anyway. I don't want to say that they're reducing them, but they asked me a question: what would it look like if we changed our graduation requirements from 28 credits to 24? Again, I think they're looking at whether or not that would give us some flexibility to make some reductions in the number of staff that we have. So I can tell you that we have a school board policy right now that says we offer 3 diploma options. The 28 credit diploma is the standard, but we also allow kids to shoot for a 32 credit diploma with distinction. We also offer, by invitation only, a minimum standards diploma of 20 credits. Because according to the state of New Hampshire, 20 is actually the minimum that you can have for a diploma. Anything that you do above and beyond that, you decide at the local level, but 20 is what you have to do at a minimum. So this is what it looks like in terms of how many credits you would need to earn each of these different diploma options. You need some English and math and science and electives and different things like that. This comes right out of our program of studies. It comes from our school counselors, and it talks about what the suggested courses and credits are that you should be looking to take over your 4 years here if you're looking at selective 4-year colleges versus 4-year colleges versus 2-year colleges. And you can find that in our program of studies. This chart shows you how many of our students over the last 3 years have earned each of these different diploma options. So if you look at that diploma with distinction number, the 32 credit diploma, basically 40 to 41% of our kids over the last 3 years have earned this diploma. That is phenomenal. Phenomenal. If we were to make graduation credit reductions, we would be shortchanging these kids, not to mention all of our kids. Between the standard diploma and the diploma with distinction, we're looking at about 93, 94% of our kids getting this diploma option. So, what do the other schools do? If we go back and look at those same set of schools that we've been comparing, we can see that they all have different kinds of schedules. Some do 7-period days and 8-period days and 5-period days. And you can see the graduation requirements at the end. Now, make no bones about it, we have the highest graduation requirements for credits of anybody on this list of schools that are similar in size to us. Fall Mountain is the only one on this list that's the same as us, and then everybody else is slightly lower. So the reason that I make this point is, you know, we could reduce our graduation requirements, but does that mean we're going to also reduce our staffing? Because I argue our staffing is already lower than what it should be for schools our size. So why would we reduce graduation requirements? I'm very concerned about what the impact would be if we did that, because quite honestly, this would come down to fewer choices that we're able to offer our students, and that's not a good thing. Right now, one of the things that our students thrive at here is the ability to have a lot of choices in how they design their day. Yes, they have to take some math and English and science and social studies and other core classes, but they get lots of fantastic opportunities to pursue different electives that they're passionate about, to do programs at the Seacoast School of Technology, to do dual enrollment programs with colleges like Southern New Hampshire University and some of the local community colleges. There's just, and do an extended learning opportunity or an internship. If we reduce our graduation requirements, we might also be, and then ultimately our staffing, we might jeopardize our ability to be able to offer these kinds of unique learning opportunities to our students. So I pulled from our graduates last year. I just wanted to give you a summary of what an actual 4-year sequence looks like for our students. So I got 3 different slides here. These are actual graduates from last year, and these are the courses they took over 4 years. And I really you have to ask yourself, if we're going to lower the graduation requirements with the expectation that we're going to have fewer teachers here, our students aren't going to have access to as many courses. They're not going to be taking some of these courses. In fact, if we reduced from an 8-period day to a 7-period day because we're lowering graduation requirements, there'd be one fewer course every year that students would take. So which 4 courses would you get rid of when you look at this? Here's another one here. Pre-engineering, robotics, Spanish, different levels, computer science at SST, marine biology, lots of neat classes. Here's another one here, right? Band, Fitness My Way, lots of Spanish again, psychology, foods and nutrition, financial skills, lots of different classes that we offer our students here. All right, the last question that came up. The school board wanted to know what would be the impact of a seat cap on course sections offered. So what that means is right now, a section is a class with a teacher and students. And they want to know if they were to put a limitation on my school that we could not run a class if it was going to have fewer than 17 students in it, what would that impact be? So as you know right now, we try to keep our classes around 20, give or take, students per teacher. Sometimes it's a little higher, sometimes it's a little lower. It just depends on what kind of class we're looking at. So I gave them this analogy. I said, if you were hired as a carpenter to build a shed for if you hired a carpenter to build you a shed, would you make a rule that, because you know when you're building something, right, you measure wood, you cut it, there's always going to be a little bit left over, and you have to plan for that when you're buying the wood that you need to build a project. So if you wanted this carpenter to build you a shed and you set a rule that every time they cut a piece of wood, no more than 5% of that wood could be considered surplus, that would be a crazy rule. Your carpenter would never be able to build you that shed. You would be setting them up with so many limitations, it would be impossible or near impossible for them to come out with the right product for you. All right, so a better way for you to have this kind of a rule with your carpenter might be to say, I don't want you to buy more than 5% surplus of all the lumber that you're going to need for this project. And then you leave it up to the carpenter to decide how much they're going to have as surplus every time they cut a piece of wood. Sometimes they might use the whole piece. Sometimes they might be cutting off just a little. Sometimes they may need to cut off more and have a little bit of more extra, right? But overall, they want to try to stay within a certain number or budget. And that's what I asked the school board and the budget committee members last night. I asked them, I said, please give us, as a staff, let's sit down together with you and come up with an appropriate budget. And then once that's done, please give my staff the freedom and the flexibility to be able to get the job done within the budget that we set. So I go back to this slide, and this is where I'm going to end, and I'm reminding everybody, when you look at all the schools closest in size to us, and you look at all of the reductions in staff that we made this year, as well as the increase in students that we've had this year, and you rank all of these schools based on their student-to-teacher ratio, we're towards the bottom of the list, folks, which tells us there are more schools in New Hampshire similar in size to us that have more staffing resources available to them. And let's be honest, we're here for the kids and we're here for learning, and it's all about our teacher resources. That's our most valuable asset. That's how we're able to help students excel here at Sanborn. Thank you for listening, and I hope this video was helpful.